Father in heaven, we thank you for the many blessings that you give us, Lord. Father, we ask that you lead us and guide us tonight, Lord, as we go about the business of this hospital. Father, help us to have a clear mind and help us, Lord, to make the decisions that are right for this community, for this hospital, and for our patients, and for everyone that's involved, Father. Lord, thank you for all the blessings you give us. These things we ask in your holy name.
Okay, community input. I got a lot of, there's a lot of people that want to speak here, and we want to be able to let you all speak too. So when you come up, just in the interest of time, let's try to not be repetitive, if you would please. But first on the list is Mr. Harlow.
Good evening. On Yellow Place Deal, is there anything in there that actually benefits the people of Cook County Hospital District? Or is it all to your buddies or your behind the scenes strings of it? That they get all the benefits and they get ripped off? Is that the deal? Will y'all conduct yourselves? Your attitude, being so secretive about stuff like your little meeting here a couple Monday mornings ago. I was looking at the executive session deal. That made it look to me like it was extremely illegal. There's no reason for executive session to be called. People own this place that have been mortgage payments for about 45 years for the hospital. Business, any hospital business, pretty well is theirs. Very little can you keep, legally keep away from people. That was pretty poor deal, pretty communist, if you ask me, on that thing. And your meetings with the dudes that working at STIP and y'all CHC, those meetings are also to be public, not behind the scenes. You don't like to say, fine, I'm just telling the truth. The 200 pages for a lease, what kind of nuttiness is that? Is that written up, interpreted several different ways for their advantage? I think bound to be full of minefields, 200 pages. That's way too long. I appreciate it if y'all. The only problem in your hospital really got is you sitting here on the board and your comrades before you. Because y'all have been willingly destroying the hospital. Why is that? It's to make it cheaper for CHC to buy this hospital in a couple of years? Is that the deal? I don't like to say that's fine for me. I don't like what y'all are doing to people's hospital. People own this thing, they need to be, made aware of what's going on. I have a question to ask you. I'm going to ask this very sincerely. Y'all been paying money for the willful destruction of a hospital. Because your mismanagement in the past several years has been nothing but destroy the hospital. I think two people on the board that's interested in trying to get this, deal straightened out and get it going. And if we'd had people like Jim and Ken on the hospital board from the very get-go, this place would be going to bikes, have a place to store their money. It would be well run, well managed, and making money. And all as usual, old guard clicks got to control it. And as usual, old guard clicks got to kill stuff. And I was one of the people that fought being hospital being mortgage supported. We want to get like Hospital Corporation of America come in and build a hospital. And they would run it, and the old guard clique members would not have a chance to get over and mess things up. But as usual, y'all mess things up and you think you act like you're so great. At least for you ain't. I admire Ken, I admire Jimmy. Jim and I have known each other since we've been about so tall. And he's got a work ethic and ethics. So does Ken. I admire them a lot. Y'all discuss me highly and forevermore discuss me.
Thank you, Mr. Bob. Christy Rigsby.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. First, I want to take this opportunity to thank you, the board members, for the time and dedication each of you have spent working on behalf of NTMC, for the employees, and most importantly, on behalf of our patients. I know in the past, some of the decisions that were made have not been in the best path to choose. But that is the past and we must move on. We have not only survived the decisions that were made, we have had that have been very difficult for us and ultimately affected the employees more than anyone else. We've actually thrived. For the staff, it's not about whether we have a tax increase. It's not about some conspiracy theory that we are hiding funds or other documents from the community. It's about providing the best patient care. When I hear and read comments about the hospital, such as close it down, sell it, or the people running that place have no clue, it's very disheartening. It's very disheartening for every employee here at this facility. With what the staff has gone through over the last 8 to 10 years, is something that I hope others never endure in their workplace. We have lived through losing millions of dollars, a daily census of 3 to 5 patients, wondering if we would get a paycheck because there were no funds in the bank. We were purchasing office supplies out of our own pockets, not turning in mileage reimbursements or other work-related expenses because we knew the hospital didn't have money, yet we still wanted to come to work and take care of our patients. We didn't know if the doors would be locked. We filed bankruptcy. We've gone through 5 different CEOs in the last 10 years and even more CFOs. We've gone through not 1, but 2 management changes. So to hear hateful words like "you disgust me" is like talking terrible about some of my family members. You have a dedicated staff of close to 300 that you truly put others before themselves, and oftentimes actually our own families. Many directors, including myself, have taken on additional duties with more responsibility but no additional pay. On any given week, I know I personally work close to 60 or 70 hours neglecting obligations at home. We've been persistent, we've been patient, we've been adaptable, we've stretched beyond our comfort level. None of us, including you board members that have to be here, none of us. But we are dedicated to patient care and patient satisfaction, and we care about the future of this hospital. Since January 2017, when the first management company took over, things began to change. We saw our daily census double and even triple at times. We have prepared the 300 hallway to reopen. We have begun to get control of revenue cycles and charges. We are now cash flowing. We've mended broken relationships with local physicians. The morale of the staff has turned around, but most importantly, the community is trusting us and they're trusting the care that we give. We tried to operate as an entity on our own without a management company, and that has gotten us in a huge mess. The best option, and the only option as I see it, is to move forward with the lease agreement with CHC, and to take advantage of the experience and the resources that they bring to the table. Tom Sledge, our CEO, has done a remarkable job of making a smooth transition to the next phase at TNC. I will say without any uncertainty that if we do not move forward with the lease soon and do what we say we're going to do, you're going to lose faith in the staff, you're going to lose faith in the community, the physicians, but most importantly, I believe this will be our last chance that anyone's going to give us at NTMC.
Thank you, Christine. Roberta Sanchez.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Roberta, and I'm going to read a letter that was provided to us on a patient that we provided care to in our facility. It's addressed to the senior leadership of North Texas Medical Center in Gainesville, Texas. Their names are blanked out. She says her husband was in our hospital for over 20 days. Often people may not take the time to appreciate God's gift in people. In fact, people find it easier to criticize rather than praise. I would like to thank you and this hospital for all the talent you have in this place. Sir or ma'am, I clean homes for a living. We're not very fancy people, and let me tell you, I felt like I was one of the Kennedys by the way your team treated me and my family. Your team generally care and have a passion in what they do, from the janitors to cooks, the receptionists, the techs, the nurses, the doctors, and the lab personnel. Not only did they treat us like family, but I witnessed the passion and love in their field. I understand that no other hospital would have allowed us to keep our children with us during this tough time in our life, which in turn would have caused more stress in our situation, as these people had just moved to our community. Your team went above and beyond to make us feel as comfortable as you can while still in a hospital. We truly are humbled and can't thank you enough for allowing us, or should I say for helping me keep my sanity by allowing my family to stay together. I don't know you firsthand, but I know this. Good leaders are trailblazers, making paths for others to allow great leaders, however, inspire their people to reach higher dreams and achieve greater things. I feel that this hospital is run by great leaders, and because your leadership reflects in the actions of your team. Your team was amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and God bless you guys a billion times for allowing me to walk out with the man God has made for me.
Thank you. Scarlett Lau.
Hello and thank you. My name is Scarlett and I'm a resident here in Kingsville. I'm present at this meeting tonight in hopes to receive the help I need and maybe to even enlighten a few areas. July of this year, I had switched employers. I had a hernia that tore, causing a big hole in my stomach. I was told not to head to Gainesville Hospital because of the reputation it held. So I was rushed over to the Sherman Hospital. 2 days later, I was scheduled for surgery the following day. My insurance had lapsed, so it was canceled. 2 days later, I came to the ER because my hernia became incarcerated, which they had to push everything back in. It's very, very painful. All in all, I've had 5 visits. I've applied 3 different times for indigent because I no longer have insurance and I'm not working because I have to have a medical release to go back to my employer. I have worked 2 additional jobs in hopes to just mainly take care of myself, but I've been let go because of my condition and not being able to perform the duties necessary. I've also gone to your financial department. I've offered everything that I possibly had down and was asking about a payment program. Apparently I've been denied because I do have an outstanding bill which is caused because of my condition. If I could get the surgery and be in good health again, I'm well aware of my debt and would like very much to move forward and pay my ER visits and so forth. I just wanted to enlighten you because this is my 3rd time applying for indigent care as well. I live in an efficiency apartment. I'm not currently employed. I have no savings. I'm asking the hospital for assistance, the financial and payment programs, however I need to go about it. It's now been 2 weeks and I still have not heard anything from the indigent or the financial department. Thank you.
Thank you, Scarlett. Terry, I can't read this.
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
It's Nis, the K is silent, I can't pronounce it either, so there you go.
Thank you.
I just came up to, I appreciate y'all letting me speak tonight, I just came up again. I just want to reiterate how much the staff morale has improved since CHC has come in and taken over. We're just, we're all just ready for a solution to this, just like I know you guys are. But they're doing a wonderful job, and it's been a pleasure working for them.
Thank you, Terry. Nancy, Brian?
Thank you for having us and allowing us to speak, and I want to thank each and every board member for their service. Having served not only on local boards but state regulatory boards, I know it's a thankless and sometimes arduous job, and I know that yours has been. I want to also say that I hope you will take every step necessary to maintain this local hospital. Having worked with economic development councils and even with the state legislature on economic development issues, one of the first things that is asked about a community is, what is your healthcare system? What is your safety system? And what is your quality of life? It's those 3 things. And so not only is healthcare sometimes just one of the necessary items in attracting an industry to an area, it's also, in many cases, the largest employer in a given area. You can take a look at Lamar County, Paris, Texas, where they have an outstanding healthcare system. And it's also a very large employer so that that money is continually circulated through the community. I think the lease agreement would be great if it maintains the hospital. I think whatever you have looked at that will maintain this hospital is what needs to happen. If you don't think that a local hospital is vital to a community, I want you to make a note of this. You call Mayor Ann Rushing in Clarksville, Texas, and you ask her what it's done to their community. And you ask her the arduous and continual process they've been through in the last 5 years trying to reopen their hospital. And believe me, it will make you rededicate your efforts to the insurance that we have a local hospital. And I too have, not as a personal patient, but a family member, have made use of the ER about 5 times over the last 18 months, and I couldn't have asked for better service no matter where I was. So, thank you for the hospital being maintained here. From what I observe and read, it looks like it's on the right track. So I just want to urge you, and once again, if you think we can't afford a local hospital, or if you think there's a reason why this hospital should not remain open that's good enough, call Mayor Ann Rushing in Clarksville. Thank you for your time.
Chloe Valero?
Hello, I'm a nurse practitioner at Lake Iowa and have been out there about 20 years now. And just wanted to bring some thoughts on healthcare in the whole community, who this hospital really does serve. For a lot of my elderly patients out there that live alone, for them to be able to come to NTMC and have their pneumonia treated, it's a huge benefit. Their friends can still come see them, can come take care of them. If they live alone, sometimes it's elderly couples, and whoever's in the hospital, the other spouse can't drive to Denton or Sherman to be with them. And our hospital is a wonderful thing, has been for many years, and I hope we can find a resolve to keep that continuing. We have a new assisted living facility coming into Gainesville. I think they deserve us to be here to provide health care for them. I think that as businesses look at this community, this is obviously health care is one of those things. I talked with a nurse that I work with that works in a local nursing home, and she told me in the last 3 weeks they have coded 6 patients at that nursing home. They need quick access to medical care. And I'm afraid if other things happened along the way, that if this facility were not to be able to provide that, it would be a sad thing. As humans, we need to provide for each other. We need to be able to take care when somebody cannot take care of themselves. That's what we're here for. For my clinic, I love the fact that when I send somebody here for labs or the imaging department, I have results that afternoon. We can make a plan and get their health care going even faster, because those results are provided to me that same day when I send someone here. I've often thought about the EMS services. If we had no facility here, would there be enough EMS services to transport these people out of town? From the facilities, the nursing facilities, the assisted living, where would those people be taken? How much could our local EMS handle if we had to transport people out of county to be taken care of? And then the last point that I have, I go to the jail 1 day a week to see the inmates for anything from hypertension to they got in a fight to any and everything that happens in the jail. And sometimes when they're brought into our jail, they are already sick. They've been in a car wreck, but they're being arrested for something. There's times where, because we don't have 24-hour medical service there, we need them to be evaluated. We tell the officer that's bringing them in, you have to take them to the hospital to get them to be pre-approved for fit for confinement. We can't just take them in and then all of a sudden have an internal bleeding issue. So we send those people here a lot. if our police officer, and it's whoever brings them into the jail, so if it's DPS, they are the ones that are responsible for bringing them here. If it's police, they bring them here. If it's the sheriff's department, they bring them here. If we didn't have this facility, we would have to send our own deputies to another town to get them fit for confinement. Then we don't have coverage to take care of us. If we had an issue that we needed a police officer to assist us with, that's one more that's out of the county. And so sometimes I think we just need to kind of think about all the ramifications of who's affected by this. I'm proud of what our hospital does. Our hospital does a great job, and it has for many years. And I hope that will just continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Gillis.
Good evening. Thanks for giving me the time. I'm glad you're here to get some good comments because I'm not here about shutting the hospital. I'm here about financial impact without taxpayer bailouts. Hopefully you all know that by now. But I do have concerns that we're going to do some things here that don't look well thought out. I do want to give you some credit on transparency as far as the hospital went and posting the draft agreements on your website and soliciting questions and feedback. I haven't heard anything back yet, but I think it's a fair number of questions. I have several concerns. I'm not saying you maybe should move forward, but I don't know why you moved forward tonight. Several concerns about the posted documents, and that they reference at least 3 other documents that were not provided, that in some cases would be controlling, such as CHC's and GHC's bylaws. In the separate agreement on indigent care payments, the taxes, I guess, would go with that. Somehow that wasn't posted, but it's referenced. I don't know how the public can adequately give feedback without these. How could a board with a fiduciary duty to the taxpayers vote on these draft documents without seeing the other documents? I'm also concerned that there are at least 24 schedules that are referenced that are blank or have no substantive entries. It's like filling out 24 blank checks. I'm also concerned that the amount of rent to be paid is blank. It would seem that would be critical to making any determination whether this is a good deal for the taxpayers or not. At a minimum, it should be enough to pay the facility bond payments. I sent in questions before the deadline asking for these missing documents and blank schedules, or date we would have access to. I got a nice acknowledgement, but nothing more. How could a board with a fiduciary duty consider voting when there's so many blank schedules and missing documents? Several of you promised financial transparency and the taxpayers would bring. Said how easy it would be to do. Some of us are wondering if that was a typical politician lie, since up until now there has not been an agenda item on transparency requested by any of the 3 board members that ran on that platform. And the monthly financials have not been posted. And Mr. Arterbury asked for it this time. In 2012, looking over the hospital financials, which were public, it was obvious to me, and I twice told this board, you would be in bankruptcy in 3 to 6 years if you continued your big spending ways. I also advocated paying down the pension shortfall when you had the money to do so, as did Mr. Arterbury. I wish this board had proven me wrong, but that hasn't been the case, and the taxpayers are getting stuck with the bill. With that in mind, with the campaign commitment to financial transparency by at least 3 of you, and I know at least 2 more agree with with the draft agreement, lease agreement, paragraph C only allows the district access to the hospital finances only under the condition that they not be made available to the public. As far as I understand it, CHC and GHC are contributing no funds and no capital assets to this joint venture. If they're using the public's money and assets as a sole or primary or major capital contributions to this joint venture, how can this board agree to block public access to the financials? What happens in a year or 2 if they can't make a go of it? Does the public have a right to know if the financial assets the public contributed via taxes are not working out and they're just going to go into bankruptcy again? I still don't understand what the hospital gains by entering this lease or joint venture. I can't figure out which CHC is going to do that they're not already duty bound to do for you, except now they're going to get a couple million a year in profits if they feel like they do I don't see any financial capital contributions by CHC or GHC. I don't see any reduced risk to the taxpayers since we're the primary provider of funds and assets to GHC. And as I think you've been told before, if you get in this joint venture or partnership, if they go under, you're probably still going to get stuck with the bills because you still have assets. And then you want to go into bankruptcy and raise more taxes again. About the only thing I see out of this is a loss of control and transparency. I know Mr. Mossman had asked before, what are the taxpayers getting out of this at another board meeting? You didn't get an answer. I hope you can answer some of that tonight. I'm not saying this is a bad deal. I'm saying you haven't filled in the blanks. You haven't told us why it's a good deal for the taxpayers. I know it's a great deal for CHC because they get a whole lot more control, profit, and we get nothing except a blind trust to send our money into. What makes this a good deal? What does this lease provide above and beyond the management agreement already in place with CHC? It looks like a great deal for CHC as its board cedes control, gives them veto rights over important decisions, and they get to keep the first $2.5 million in profits each year, in addition to their management fees, and they have very little accountability because it's all our money and they're going to hide it. What makes this a good deal for the taxpayers? Again, how is risk being reduced for us, the taxpayers? Where is the transparency that was promised? How much will private board members be paid if they go on this? Because we won't have visibility into that. How can a board with a fiduciary duty to the taxpayers vote on these draft documents with many blanks to be filled in without seeing the other documents that govern the agreements? What makes this a good deal for the taxpayers? See it. You can explain.
Thanks, Steve. Jimmy?
Good evening. President of the hospital board, Andy Anderson, said in the previous email, "Aren't you glad you don't live in Munster Hospital District? They have a maintenance and operation tax." And he also stated in an article in the Gainesville Daily Register that the indigent care tax is a restricted account. My question is, did the board vote on converting the indigent care tax into a maintenance and operation? If not, how did this happen? The voters never voted for it. The voters voted against the maintenance and operation tax when the Gainesville Hospital District was formed. It appears the bar got raised for the indigents to apply and qualify or collect indigent care. It appears 3, 4, 5 years ago we spent around $800,000 a year on indigent care. The last 2 years we spent $200,000 per year, with a neighborhood of $2.7 million shortfall in the indigent fund. Where's the money? If you put it into general funds, it would appear the hospital's making money. Shane always says how good the hospital's doing. It appears if you take all the taxpayers' money out of the general fund, there won't be any extra there. Jim Kendricks with CHC said we lost $7 million last year. Who's getting took? First off, the taxpayers in good faith paid their taxes, thinking their money was taking care of the indigents. Second, we're turning the indigents away in a neighborhood of $600,000 a year and placing them into the bad debt column, according to prior years. If these people had any credit rating, you probably have destroyed it for them. Gerard, the CFO that TMC had in place here, said we only need a part-time CFO. CHC has been managing this hospital for almost 6 months. They've had at least 3 people drawing a tidy paycheck in the accounting department. Is this common for CHC? I could see this maybe if we were doing our own billing, but it's outsourced. As far as I know, they still haven't finished reconciling the books. There are times it appears Shane and Jeff, as well as others on this board, are more worried about CHC making money than representing the district that they were voted to represent. The board never even looked for or anyone else to make an offer on a lease. You're just taking what CHC offers you. In my opinion, if you vote for this lease, the way it's written, you're setting the taxpayers up for another bankruptcy. Some of the board say Ken and I need to trust the lawyers in CHC. Some say that you trust them. In my opinion, when you trust them, you provide no oversight. This is probably the main reason why the hospital's in bankruptcy. In my opinion, there's been little to no oversight. I feel most of you would trust CHC and the lawyers if they told you the sky was falling. My last point I want to say, some of y'all have talked about closing this hospital down. That ain't gonna happen. As long as the taxpayers are putting money into it, it ain't gonna shut down. Nobody wants it to shut down. Myself, I want good quality care, and I want this thing to be able to stand alone without taxpayer funding. That's what I'm doing. I want this thing to have good quality care. Nothing against anybody working here. Some provide very good care. Take good care of people. I hear good comments as well as bad. I hear both. So I'm here advocating to get quality care, and I know a lot of y'all are doing that. That's great. But I'd just like to see better. As far as this lease, every one of you guys get up here and talk, and you talk about how good this lease is. We got to have this lease. How good is it? Is a CHC managing that bad that we have to have this lease? Myself, I don't see why we can't keep with the management we have in place. Thank you all very much.
Number 4, approval of minutes of the special call meeting of September 17th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from September 17th meeting.
Motion by Darrell, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any other discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We have approval of the minutes of regular meeting on September 24th, 2018. Bobby makes a motion, second. Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Approval of the minutes of special call meeting September 28th, 2018. Motion to approve those.
Make a motion.
Okay. Anyone say? Who's second? And any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Information items 2, executive report.
As everyone knows tonight, I'm going to go over our volume like I've been doing each month. Just starting right off at admissions. So this month is the first month we had a slight off from prior year. It's easily explainable. One of our OB physicians decided that she did not want to take call anymore, so she decided to start doing her deliveries at a neighboring facility. So if you look at the delta on births compared to where we were, we would have been ahead of prior year had we had the full complement of OB providers. We are working with several OB providers to get that ramped up to back to 100% coverage. So I have faith that we'll rebound. Patient days were up despite the admissions being down. That's due to the higher acuity. People are sicker. We're keeping sicker folks here. See, moving down, case mix index reflects the same thing. It is case mix index is basically how sick the people are, and that validates why we have longer stays. We did, I puzzled over this for quite some time. It showed that we had a large decrease in the number of surgeries. And based on prior trends, I could not see how that could be possible. The board members I included, there's a piece of paper there, I believe, included, shows what was previously reported in last year, what the actual numbers were and what we did this year. And there's some footnotes at the bottom that explain, basically, they miscounted. I went back and had multiple people run the rewrite reports. So if you notice that item A at the side there, the September 17 previously reported, they said they had 35 inpatient ORs. that actually number was a combination of inpatient ORs and folks that came in for a OR procedure, stayed the night, but it was still considered an observation, so that's outpatient. So that number should have been lower than what it was. It should have been reduced by 8. Outpatient OR, if you see the footnote on there, for whatever reason, somebody, when they were counting that, actually included the inpatient numbers in addition to the outpatient numbers. They add up beautifully, so it's good math. Problem is, they put them in the wrong column. So it highly inflated the number of outpatient ORs they had because they included the inpatient. Something else that was included in it that we haven't been reporting on are pain procedures. So we have a pain physician, Dr. Hine. He does a lot of injections for folks that have a lot of pain and that sort of thing. And those have not been shown in our surgery numbers, but it was included in that prior number. So and then when you add it all up together, so basically that means they double counted the inpatient numbers and also included pain procedures. That's why that number was so much higher, what it looked like than what we've previously done. So for the rest of you, basically we were 3 off of prior year in total surgeries. And the primary reason for that is because we used to have 2 pain providers, now we have 1. And Dr. Rufe had 7 procedures that is no longer with us. So that was pretty easily explainable, but it really concerned me because I know we've been as busy or busier than we were last year. So moving down, you see that number I reflected earlier in births due to Dr. Klein moving her delivery practice. She's still doing procedures here, but she's not doing deliveries. ED visits were up a healthy 19%. To me, that's once again that's a reflection of how the perception views that we can take care of them. So folks are coming back to us because the reputation that we are rebuilding. Clinic visits as a whole between specialty and primary care was up. Home health care visits was up, and imaging procedures were up as well. You would expect imaging to go up with ED visits because that's where most of those come from. The other thing that I had to report on today was I've been asked last time for an update on the roof. So they have started the process. I asked for a Gantt chart or ETA, and I don't want to offend anybody, but if you ever had anybody work in your house, they'll tell you a certain amount of time in verbally, but they're not going to commit to that on paper. So they gave me a Gantt chart that's included in there. If you flip it over, it tells you they said by April they would be done with it. But verbally, they'll tell you we'll knock this thing out way sooner than that, weather depending. And of course, that's all you can ask for is good weather to get a roof repaired. I believe that was it for that report. Do anybody have any questions for me?
Was it just an oversight on those numbers?
I think that probably what happened is somebody was probably asked Adam that didn't normally do it. That's all I can think of. It was back. That's back. Like I said, last year this time when TMC was running the shop, and I'm not sure who was adding numbers at that time.
Did we check the months around this?
Yes, and going back there was some discrepancy as well. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that I'll send out a report that shows line item like I did for this month to show you what it was. So it's been good growth.
It'd make the bottom line look better when you do those.
It will, but it'll be accurate. Yeah, you want accuracy.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
We're going to carry the number 8 over to the next month, just an information item, but when we do by phone, and we'll take that for next month. Number 9, bond finance update, some information on that.
Good evening, Chris Janney with Hilltop Securities, we're the district's bond advisor. You've got an action item later on the agenda. It's to pass the bond resolution so that you put the lease on the active agenda. One thing I do want to make sure everybody understands is while the board is passing the resolution, it's the same kind of resolution you've been passing the last couple of years. Your delegate gives a not to exceed on the bond amounts. Your bond lawyer, Sims here, I'll let him present his ordinance to you later, because the not to exceed amount, it delegates the ability for the board president, Mr. Anderson, to work with myself. And then what we do, remember I have a fiduciary responsibility to you, board. I'm your guy, not the people selling the bonds guy. But it allows us then to work with, and it's J.P. Morgan will be doing a public offering of the bonds and will be sold to the public. But with that, we anticipate getting 2 ratings, the Fitch rating and the Moody's rating. Both of those rating agencies are ready to go. We have all the information we need except for one piece. And we all know what that piece is, and you've been working on it. And it's that lease that you're talking about tonight. And the one thing that's important in that lease, and the difference between what you have right now that you're operating with and what you're doing in it, this lease that you're going to enter into transfers the operating risk away from the district and the public and the taxpayer to your new tenant. If you will, CHC is the primary in that partnership, the large partner. So CHC for 10 years will be assuming the operating risk. That's important to these rating agencies. With that provision, we're going to get the same high rating that we've been enjoying from Fitch all the way along under their criteria. We would also know that Moody's will move us from non-investment grade into investment grade. If you don't have that kind of lease, if the district's going to maintain the risk of ongoing operations, then we're going to be subject to the rating agencies. They have published criteria for public hospitals that have operating risks. What we will need to do is, we would still be investment grade with Fitch. We're going to be very, very, very low investment grade. And we're not going to meet the Moody's criteria, so we're not going to be able to get that second grade. The bottom line is, it will push up the cost of borrowing. When it pushes up the cost of borrowing, if the interest rate goes up, remember, you're delegating to Mr. Anderson and myself. Our goal is whatever the interest rate is, we're going to keep the tax rate for debt the same. And we're going to keep the payments and we're going to pay it off as fast as we can with the money that you currently levy for your debt. We're not going to increase the debt cost to the taxpayer beyond what you just did at your last month's meeting.
Chris, over the last 2 to 4 weeks, how many times do you think you've had inquiries from those 2?
With Fitch alone, myself, I've had traded over 2 dozen email communications, and I've probably had 6 to 8 conference calls with them. Sarah and Esther, who worked with me, were both on vacation, so I couldn't answer that. I will tell you, I'm their supervisor. I know they've had at least between the 2 of them as many calls and more emails than I have had.
And what's Fitch and Moody's concerns?
The one thing that they are waiting on is we had told them that the goal was the district board wants to get into a lease that transfers operating risk away from the taxpayer into a tenant corporation and a valid and a viable, a proven operator like CHC or UHS. And that's all they're waiting on is us.
And the failure to have a lease in place within the next few weeks.
It just puts
Tell me what that means to the taxpayer.
You will have to wait to sell your bonds. If we don't have it now, we got the holidays coming up. If you're really ready, and I'm not here to advocate one way or another, if you're really ready and this lease is ready to go, we can still get these bonds sold this year and get the rates locked in and get the rate risk on the bond and the repayment and get all that side locked up. If you don't, then as long as it takes you to get there, if you're going to you're either going to have to tell me, Chris, just go ahead with the more restrictive criteria, the lower ratings, the higher cost, and just lock us up a higher payment. Like 0.5% is going to increase your payment. I mean, the impact to interest cost about $300,000 a year. Well, if I have to add that into the payment, and I've got to, like I said, I'm solving for the fixed tax rate. It's just like with a mortgage. To keep the payment the same, I got to go farther.
We kept getting asked earlier, and this is one of probably many, but what is the benefit to the taxpayer? Having a lease in place is a lower interest rate as we're about to roll out all these bonds.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And rates
Christian, you said that lease releases the district from all financial responsibility. Can somebody show me where that is in the lease where it says that we are released from all financial responsibility?
I'll defer that to your lawyers. But
You gave us the positive side, now the negative side.
what if CHC, GCH, move belly up on us? Who's gonna get stuck then?
I'll defer to your legal team will have to answer that for you.
Well, you know who's gonna get stuck. It'll be the taxpayers again.
We'll talk about
I don't hear CHC volunteer to pay us out of debt. They're wanting us out of debt.
Okay, I understand your point of view, but
So that they
in
can.
all due respect, sir,
We
I'm not
went into
going.
this debt because of TMC. TMC was gonna take us over, but in order to do it, they wanted us clear, free debt.
Okay,
that's all
we're
in
gonna
the
have
lease part.
bond information for, this is not the bond, we're gonna be.
We're talking bonds here, Andy. We're talking the bonds.
I
He's got
I
a-
still
but
wanna
he
hear
wasn't
I wanna
aware.
hear the negative side. You know, all you been doing is
You can
telling the
ask
good
him.
side.
You can answer.
I wanna hear what's gonna happen in a year or less or more if CHC pulls the plug on us. We're still liable. You're not entering you're entering into a partnership, not a joint venture or a lease. It's a partnership because we're still out there on these bonds.
So for Chris, is your question of how does that affect our bond rating if CHC
It's
struggles financially?
I know that's gonna affect our bond rate. We're gonna have to go up.
He's talking
on-
about the bonds.
Yeah, and I'm talking about the bonds, because
So,
we're
but I
gonna have to
think
come
you're-
back again in a year or less or more and do this again.
I think your question is what effect does it have on the bonds?
What he keeps telling us, so we need to talk to the legal team about that.
I was gonna say, Mr. Carter, maybe that's the best way I can answer that for you. The way, the absolute legal requirement for operations will be with this new joint venture tenant that is under. There is no obligation, legal obligation, for the district to step in for operating losses anymore. The reason that's important from the bond ratings agencies and why they rate it as stronger is because at that point, the district does not have, just like we validated that the pension was indeed an obligation of the district to pay the employees.
You're gonna have short start with on here.
Yes, sir, but that was really, that's what, it was an obligation, and that's why we're selling bonds. You're not gonna have that obligation anymore.
I'm interrupting you, but you know, if
The
we keep
lawyers
going,
are, what do you
keep going,
Hey,
you haven't proven that these people are gonna run this. We didn't have a leasing company when we started. We've always had a CFO and CEO and CNO. We went bankrupt on our own,
yes, sir.
okay?
And that's what I was trying to get to.
On our own.
You
And
know,
now we got a leasing, we had one company come in, TMC, they pulled the plug and left. Why did TMC leave? This is such a good deal for us. You set it up for them. You set this up for them. No payments on anything for TMC. Free and clear. We're free and clear.
Well, I don't know, Chris,
We're
you
$39
can't
million
answer the TMC's.
in debt.
I heard the same thing you did from TMC.
We're $39 million in debt, where we was a little over 18 million.
Chris,
Yes, sir.
you came with the same song and dance whenever we were gonna enter into a management agreement with CHC. Exact same and dance, song and dance that you're doing right now, saying we got to have this lease. So now, you telling me that we entered into this management agreement and it wasn't no good?
In order for you to continue getting funding and liquidity, you needed the management agreement. If you want the permanent takeout bonds done, I can't get you the lowest available rates that you can get without a management agreement that transfers the operating risk away from the district into a qualified entity. I am telling you, yes, we have heard from Fitch. They have reviewed, they know who CHC is. They've seen the same draft documents that I got them at the same time the board did last week. They've been reviewed by that agency, and the agency says if the board, when and if they go into a lease structured like this, you will meet the criteria that for the rating that you expect. Yes.
Somebody's gonna have to prove to me how we're gonna get out all financial responsibility with this joint venture.
Yeah, and I'll just, again, Sam Gill from McCall Partners Board, Police Respond Council. But the one point that I just wanted to make to Mr. Arthur is that, again, as we started this process 2 years ago, the whole goal of this process was to wind up all of these obligations, okay? And we've done that with the 4 series of bonds. So this final takeout issue with respect to the taxpayers, essentially what that does is it does finally ball up all of those obligations, takes them off the book, winds them into the final series of bonds. The tax rate has already been set, and Chris can speak to the level at which it's been set, and that tax rate, will suffice paying off all of these obligations over, depending on how long it goes out, from I think 20 to 25 years, depending on.
Now, you got that,
Right.
you got to the point 2 years ago, there was nothing on the table or any discussion of a lease agreement, all managed. Where did the lease come in at? Now we've got to have a lease to get these bonds at a lower rate. Go ahead, Chris.
Actually, we were working with UHS to get to a long-term, they call it management agreement or a lease. It was still going to be a lease and management agreement structure. They were doing the other 2 documents, but they were going to take the operating risk. Yes, this is structured differently because you're working with nonprofits, not a for-profit. You've got a different legal team. It's a lease. But
It's not really a lease, it's a partnership.
I agree with Jimmy, it's a partnership.
But it limits the amount the district must put up front. If you are only putting up the amount of money you agreed to up front, you cannot be compelled to do so.
Well, I don't know, if you read their contract, they can come back and ask for more money. So what does that mean?
I hear your point.
Yeah, you're in the hot seat.
But with all due, but again, with all due respect, you can say no too. You can't.
There's
They
just
can't
two of
force
us,
you.
just 2 of us will say no to this tonight.
I get you. I understand this.
Any other questions?
I've got a feeling, everybody wants to think how great everything is. Nobody ever looks that it might not go the way you plan, okay, the way everything looks. Everything is great. And I got a feeling for this lease, joint venture, partnership is done, it'll end up costing the taxpayers a hell of a lot more than you're gonna save on them bonds. My opinion.
And Chris, did we get this, all the bonds gonna be approved tonight? There's not next year, we're gonna have to approve some more?
What you're going to do, if you're ready to move forward and if you vote, you will delegate that ability. The board will delegate the ability for Mr. Anderson to do so.
So we're gonna have the 2017, the 2017A, 2017B, C. All of it's gonna go in effect this year.
But they're all in effect.
Yeah.
What this will do is, it will give you the authorization for up to $42,500,000, which will be used to pay all that off, because remember, we got the step-up rate that's hanging over us next February with JP Morgan. What it allows us to do is borrow the money, pay JP Morgan off. It's all bond money, it's all fixed rate, and it's fixed for life.
Fixed, so in other words, in October next year, we're not gonna get another tax increase for the
Exactly.
bonds.
No, that's right. It allows me to work with Mr. Anderson, see what the real bond rates are, the absolute fixed rates, and come back to you and say, we agree to a deal where our tax rate will be sufficient to pay bonds.
Since we've done passed the tax rate for this year.
That's right. But you won't have to consider tax rate increases for debt moving forward.
So we're gonna be paying principal on them bonds next year?
Yes, sir. We are paying principal back beginning next year and for every year that they're out there. Just like if you were on home mortgage, you start paying a little bit of principal and it grows over time.
Any questions? Okay, Chris, it is now 6:54. We're going into closed session according to
You want to do the bond resolution and Sam is here and then.
okay, before y'all leave, hang on. So we've got Sam here, so do you want to go home early? Is that? Actions are number 12. This is number 12, right, for the bond? Number 12.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, members of the board, again, what we have in front of you tonight is the final bond order. What this will do is this will delegate authority to Mr. Anderson and Mr. Lee to effectuate the sale of the bonds at a future date. From the date of adoption of this order, we have a 6-month period in which you can work with Mr. Janning and Hilltop Securities to, again, determine the best rates at which the market allows, lock in those rates under delegated authority to Mr. Anderson, and proceed again to refund the 2017 bonds, the 2017A bonds, the 2017B bonds, the 2018 bonds, with this final series of bonds. Again, lining all of these prior bonds up into one bond issue that will then be repaid over a term of 20 to 30 years, depending on interest rates and ratings, et cetera.
Anytime, so we won't have to worry about them going at that higher rate.
Exactly. The other thing that each series of bonds outstanding, as Mr. Ganning mentioned, a step-up rate goes into effect in April of 2019, in which the interest rates on those bonds, which are from 5.9 to 6%, will jump up to 12%, and then to 15%.
Okay,
There's many blank lines in here.
so
What are we looking at for principal amount? What are we looking for the interest here?
Yeah, as I mentioned, what this document really does, pursuant to Texas law, it delegates authority to fill in those blanks. Those blanks that are in that is the form of bond that you're looking at. And again, we will not know the exact size of the bond. We will not know the exact interest rates until those bonds are sold at a future date in the future. Chris, I'll let you speak to them.
Can't you put a number in there, Chris, and say, when we come back, say, hey, just like you did here several months ago, we come in lower than what we thought we were going to.
I can give you a number that I can come in, I believe, lower. You know that interest rates have gone up over the last 3 months. They've gone up about 1/3%. Can we think that we're going to get somewhere around a 6% cost of funds is what we're looking at. But again, until I get, that's what this ordinance lets us do. It lets Andy and I get the real hard rate from JP Morgan when they're in the live bond market, and we'll see those sales. I've got access to the trading screens, all that they use. We'll see what they're really selling the bonds at, and we will sell enough bonds to pay only those, pay off what we have. We'll sell as little as we can, and we'll sell at the best interest rate we can get, and we'll bring and buy up with both.
I'm gonna write 6% down since you said that tonight.
That is my best educated guess until they get them in the market.
I want to see it lower than
Chris,
that.
is that with the lease agreement?
Yes, sir. That's with the lease agreement and the existing Fitch rating. Again, if you all decide and you're not gonna do that deal, you're gonna stay operating at risk, you want me to go get ratings, I can get ratings and bring back a different interest rate estimate. But that'll take time.
Okay, and we're authorizing issuance of Gainesville Hospital District, Texas Limited Tax bonds, establishing procedures and delegating authority for the sale and delivery of the bonds, providing for the security and payment of said bonds, providing an effective date, and enacting other provisions relating to the subject. Do I hear a motion? Any further discussion on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No. Okay, now, 6:59, we will go into closed session. Okay, it is 8:30 and we have everyone back here. 8:30 to go into open session and we are on number 11. Discuss, consider and take action if necessary on a facility and equipment lease agreement with Gainesville Community Hospital Incorporated, GCH, hospital operator agreement with Community Hospital Corporation, CHC and GCH, and a hospital operation transfer agreement with CHC and GCH. And a motion on that.
I want to make a motion that we adopt the executive resolution after discussing in closed session, so that everyone's familiar with what it is, and you go ahead and read it. Whereas the district has been in negotiations with Community Health Corporation, CHC, related to the leasing of hospital facilities and equipment to Gainesville Community Hospital, GCH, a newly formed Texas nonprofit corporation. The participation of the district in a joint venture with the GCH, transfer of hospital operations to GCH and CHC, and the assumption of ongoing operations of Gainesville Community Hospital by GCH and CHC. And whereas the district has agreed to the terms of the facility and equipment lease agreement, the operations transfer agreement, and the operations agreement between the district and CHC and/or GCH collectively, named transaction documents in principle with regard to all material terms. It is therefore resolved that, number one, the district approves the transaction documents as presented and hereby empowers and authorizes the district officers to execute the transaction documents on behalf of the district. And if required, to make any non-substantive revisions required to consummate the transactions. 2, any one or all of the following are specifically granted the power and authority to execute each of the transaction documents. Andrew Anderson, President. Jeff Isbell, Secretary. Shane Lee, Vice President. I'll second that motion.
Okay, so the people of the community would know, Matt, would you come up and give us give it all the community, and we can ask some more questions and talk about what this is all about.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Max Stewart, and this is my law partner, Keith Ritter, with the firm Hall Render. Hall Render is a firm we're in 10 states, I think now. There are about 150 or 60 of us that practice law, and our sole clientele are healthcare providers. All we do is provide legal advice to healthcare providers. We represent rural hospitals across the country. In fact, some are lawyers in D.C. I'm not going to go through this yet. Okay. Some of our lawyers in D.C. Lobby on behalf of rural hospitals. We were asked to come in and be I've been practicing law 40 years, with 36 years of that being exclusively healthcare providers and primarily representing hospitals, and primarily not-for-profit hospitals. Keith has been practicing 23. Seems like 25. And he has been exclusively in the healthcare environment, and in fact has spent time as in-house counsel for a hospital district. For a hospital entity. So he's seen from inside and outside. We were asked to come in and be the second set of eyes and help negotiate the 3 agreements that have been presented tonight: the facility equipment and lease agreement, operations transfer agreement, and the operations agreement. Where I'd like to start is a series of questions came in, and I'd like to address the questions that came in. I tried to organize the questions into categories. There were essentially 4 categories of questions. Is this arrangement permissible by law? What are the benefits of the arrangement? Are we turning over our cash and banking accounts? And then general ministerial questions. I grabbed the wrong book. Make that a deal. So, with your permission, I'll start trying to answer these questions. The first question is this arrangement permissible by law? And the answer is unequivocally yes. For those that want to make notes, you look to the Texas Constitution, Article 9. You look to the Special District Local Laws Code, Section 1077.001 et sec, which is the enabling statute for the Gainesville Hospital District. You look to the Health and Safety Code of Texas, Sections 282.01 et sec and Sections 285.071 and 285.091. And you'll also have Attorney General Opinion KP-0029 from August of 2015. All of these provide the legal support to say that this is a legal transaction. We can go over the agreements in a moment. I thought I'd address first some of the benefits. The second group of questions were, what are the benefits of the arrangement? You've got a hospital that's gone into bankruptcy and is coming out of bankruptcy, and it now sets a defined plan for continuing operations of the hospital out of bankruptcy. It is favorable with your bonds. You heard the bond people earlier, I'm not a bond lawyer. You heard the bond people appropriately say that you're transferring operational risk from the district to the community. You heard the bond lawyers say that, in fact, what will happen is you'll get a better bond rating and you'll get a better interest rate. Now, I haven't looked at the bond issues. As I generally understand it, you've got to pay this stuff back, you know, so you might as well get the best interest rate that you can. So it helps you with your bonds. Replaces the daily operations of the hospital and an experienced rural hospital operator, but it still preserves the district's overall obligation to ensure that indigent care is provided. Under the agreement, community is accepting the responsibility for undertaking the indigent care. It removes the daily operational and financial risk of the district. We will no longer have the general daily operational costs. We won't have the costs and risks associated with HR. What's also important to understand, what will happen is eventually the employees will become employees of Gainesville Community Hospital. Here's how the relationship exists. A new not-for-profit entity has been created, Gainesville Community Hospital. Gainesville Community Hospital will be a corporation, but a not-for-profit corporation. It'll have two members. One member will be community, and one member will be the district. Now, people think, if you're a member in terms of ownership, nobody owns a not-for-profit, but these are the two people that get to make the decisions about this new hospital. And this new hospital and community, in effect, are also taking up all the accrued liability you have for employees once they become employees of Gainesville Community Hospital. What does that mean? All the accrued vacation. You know, I don't know what benefit plans that you have, but all those plans and all that risk associated and that ongoing liability is now gone. It now exists with community and GMC. Equipment and supplies costs are gone. This is incredibly important, and what you need to understand, these are complicated documents, and we were negotiating as late as 2 o'clock this afternoon on some of the documents and some of the terms. Community is accepting the responsibility to pay, after the closing of this, the cost of vendor accounts payable that existed prior to the closing. If there was $1 that we owed today that we haven't paid when community takes over, it's not community's obligation through the Gainesville Community Hospital. We're transferring our accounts receivable. But what we've put into the agreement is that for a minimum of 4 years, we get, if there are revenues in excess of expenses, for a minimum of 4 years, they are required to give us first dollars of all revenues in excess of expenses up to $2.5 million a year. So if in year one, and it's not going to happen, but you know, there are going to be revenues eventually in front of expenses, in excess of expenses. We get first dollar, up to $2.5 million every year for 4 years. And if it doesn't happen that we get paid back the $2.5 million a year for 4 years, then that is extended until such time as we at least get $7.5 million back. That's essentially the AR that we're contributing to it. In addition, there is the lease of the property and equipment. The rent rate for that is $600,000 a year. Someone had asked, it was blank. We've been negotiating on that. Plus, my firm retained an independent appraiser to go out there and conduct an appraisal of this to come up with a commercially reasonable rent. And interestingly, a number of the entities that they've looked at who've gone through something similar to that get no rent when they're gone to a third party to try and take over operations. The rent range that the appraiser came back with was $500,000 to $600,000. We've insisted that it be $600,000. So we're at the upper end of the appraisal assessment of what commercially reasonable rent would be for the rent, for the leasing of the equipment and the property. In addition to that $600,000 in rent, after that first $2.5 million, of course, we get the first $2.5 million. When it gets to be $2.5 million and $1, then that $1 and thereafter is split 50-50. We get 50%, the community gets 50%, and that's in the form of increased rent rate. That's how it's being documented. Now, it's important to understand that this 50% the community gets plowed back into the entity. We're all trying to keep this entity going. Question came, are we turning over our cash and bank accounts? No. Our cash is our cash. We're keeping our cash. We're keeping our bank accounts. They don't have access to our bank accounts. We, however, did put within it a backstop. The reality is when you change from one system to another system, there can be delays in the accounts receivable that come in as people say, oh, I'll sit on my money for what I owe you for another month. You know, I don't have to pay you, I'm going to hold off. I'm going to slow pay. We've agreed for 1 year to be a backstop to try and backfill if in fact there is a delay in securing that accounts receivable. And that maxes out at $3 million. So we keep the cash and we agree to be a backstop. If we agree, I mean, they have to ask us and we agree to it or not. The corporate entities. Gainesville Community Hospital, as I said, will be a not-for-profit entity. There are going to be 2 boards affiliated with Gainesville Community Hospital, separate and apart from the hospital district. The hospital district board will continue to exist. It's not going away under the enabling statute. It has a fiduciary duty to ensure that the people that are supposed to be giving industry care are doing it. It's not going away, but it won't be operating the hospital. You'll have the corporate board for Gainesville Community Hospital. It'll be a 3-member board, 2 members from community and 1 member from the district. It's a member they have to approve. And then you're going to have a governing board of the hospital. It's important to understand that under CMS conditions of participation and various accreditation requirements, we're required to have a governing board that makes certain daily operational decisions as a board. For example, it's clear in the state of Texas that only the governing board has the final authority on who's credentialed to be on the medical staff. And there's an AG opinion that says that cannot be delegated to any person. That governing board has to do it. So this governing board will be a hospital governing board, which will policies and procedures, credentialing, and those sorts of things. That board will have a minimum of 6 members, all of whom must be citizens of this county. 1 member must be a member of the medical staff. 1 member must be a member of senior administrative staff. And 2 members must be members of the hospitals. So 6 people from the community, ensuring that the hospital district has a significant position on that. Eventually, bylaws will be created. A question was raised, why we don't have bylaws now? The answer to that question is the same as the answer to why do we not have schedules at this point in time. The question was raised, you know, there are 25 schedules, why don't you have anything? All I can tell you is these are how these deals get done. First, you have to make sure that you're in agreement, that we're gonna do this together, that we're gonna have a deal, that we're gonna have this lease, we're gonna have this operations agreement, an operations transfer agreement. And then you populate the schedules. The schedules are a ministerial act. You know, here are the contracts assigned, here are the names of the employees. It's a ministerial act which is commonly populated after you've decided you're going to have a deal or not have a deal. We have in the operations transfer agreement, the reservation of powers.
In the operations.
The operations agreement. We have a series of reserve powers that require approval of the hospital district as the Class B member of Gainesville Community Hospital. Any change to the mission or purpose of the hospital requires that the members agree to it. It has to be both. Any amendments or revisions to the articles of incorporation or bylaws, those are the, enabling documents for an entity, we both have to agree. Amendments or revisions to the articles of incorporation or bylaws of any subsidiary corporation. If we decide that we want to have a subsidiary corporation to do something, we've got to agree to those things. The creation of, investment in, or investment in of any subsidiary entity, partnership, or venture. We do these things together. The same creation that also applies to any amendment, revision, or termination of any such agreement. Merger, dissolution, or consolidation of the entity require both of us have to approve it. The approval of major development campaigns and fundraising in excess of $3 million. It was a negotiated number, and it's a commercially reasonable number that requires us to have equal approval. These are the two most important things, however. It requires us to approve the entry into any agreement which would have a materially negative effect on the district to meet its statutory or constitutional obligations with regard to indigent care. What that means is if we declare that this agreement is going to have a material negative effect, then we're going to vote against it, and we can't have that agreement. Now, you will say, well, what's material, what's not material? That's part of the general business operations that get decided. There's no way in an agreement like this that you can list everything to say we must have complete unanimity on that. So if there is something which would have a material negative effect on our meeting our obligation on indigent care, we get to stop. It also requires both parties to agree to the entry into any agreement which would have a materially negative effect on our ability to maintain our bond rating and to meet our obligations under the bonds. So community might say, this is what we want to do. We say that affects our bond rating and it affects our ability to meet our obligations under the bond. We don't agree to it. So they can't unilaterally affect us that way. Are we turning over the cash and bank accounts? No, we're not. Ministerial questions, and there were a number of them, and I've tried to address all that seem to be the same. A question was asked, why a bill of sale? We need a specific document to document exactly what assets have been transferred. You can do that through an asset purchase agreement, which because of the unique nature of this being a hospital district, a governmental entity, you don't do an asset purchase agreement like you might do if you were selling to private equity or something. So a bill of sale is the document so that if someone comes here and says, you own this document, show me why do you own this document. Here's the bill of sale. This is why I own the document, own the asset. The question was asked, who has access to our banking accounts? Only us, only the hospital district. Community doesn't get a trace around through our banking accounts. Contract assumption. It was asked, what contracts are being assumed and what contracts are not being assumed. So today, not a single contract has been identified that community is not prepared to assume. It is not unreasonable to say, I want the right to maybe not assume something. Strategically, it's helpful because there may be a bad contract, and if it's not assigned, we may be able to get out of a bad contract, and a better contract can be entered into. That's a commercially reasonable and very common clause.
Now, Mac, is that only specific for a vendor, or what about doctor's contracts?
Excellent point. We specifically carved out physician contracts, and here's why we did it. Well, let me back up a little bit. All employees will become employees of Gainesville Community Hospital. But we've held back all professional employees at this stage of the game, and here's why. If they become employed by Gainesville, then you have to obtain new contracts with the payers. And there's a 90-day or longer lag between I need a new contract with the payor, and they'll start paying you under that contract. The problem is during that 90-day period, you may be providing care, but you don't get paid for it. So what we've done is those professional employees will become Gainesville Community Hospital employees after they've gotten their new contracts. During that interim, we get the benefit of all revenue that is produced by those, and community backstops us. If it turns out that we pay more to those doctors than the revenue that comes in, they make us whole. So we get the benefit of the 90 days getting the revenue without any risk, and then once the contracts are assumed, then once the payment contracts come in, then they become Gainesville Community Hospital employees, and they own all the responsibilities for them thereafter. It was asked if the agreement terminates, will Gainesville Community Hospital reassign 855A and 855B? Those are Medicare documents. Yes, they're required to turn over everything to us. If it comes back to us, and we have to start operating. They have to work with us and give us everything we need, sign all the documents so we can get up and keep going. The question was asked, if we've turned over all our assets, why is community asking for further assurances? They're asking us to provide assurance and representations and warranties that what we said is true. It's commercially reasonable and standard. I liken it to when Reagan said trust but verify. We show them the documents, but if it turns out that we've misrepresented something to their detriment, they have a right to look back to us, as we do to them. Standard in virtually any business arrangement like this. There was a clause in section 1.10C of the operations transfer agreement that said we do this, save and accept cash. The question arose, what does that mean, save and accept cash? It means we're not transferring the cash, we're keeping the cash. That's just saying, this is going, but you don't get the cash. It is lawyers' belts and suspenders. The question was raised, why isn't there a management agreement? Well, as indicated, we were negotiating up until 2 o'clock this afternoon. You don't start negotiating that until you know you have a deal, and you know what the deal is. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be a management agreement, it's not going to be strongly negotiated. What it means is, you don't do that until you know you got a deal. If the deal goes through, then we'll start it, but nothing will happen. There will be no transfer until that management agreement is in place. The question was asked, why are the schedules blank? Again, it's a ministerial act. You populate those after you understand what the deal is. There were a series of questions about a section of the agreement about third-party claims. This section said that if a third-party claim was sent to us, if Gainesville Community Hospital said this claim's come in, we think you're responsible, we have 30 days to look at it and say we're going to accept it or we're not going to accept it. The concern from the questioner, I think, was how can you get your hand on the documents that you need and how can you make an assessment? This is not meant to be the definitive assessment. It is the initial look-see, so there's some certainty at the end of 30 days we're going to say we're not taking this claim, or we are taking this claim. And in fact, after that 30 days, if you say we're not taking the claim, it turns out we might owe the claim, then you can say, all right, we're going to take that claim. It's to create some sort of deadline by which people start making decisions. I would note that Community and Gainesville Community Hospital have exactly the same obligation. These are mutual terms. Where are the bylaws? They're not yet drafted. Bylaws, for the most part, are boilerplate. They address things like how do you talk to each other, how do you give notice of meetings, and those sorts of things. And they're very typical standard provisions. The things that you are not standard are essentially already addressed in these other documents like reservation of powers. So we've addressed what will be the substantive issues in these other documents, and then we'll populate the bylaws. It's not at all unusual as you go through this process. Make sure you have a deal before you start creating other documents that are dependent on what the deal looks like. There was a question about notice to the district at the hospital address. There's going to be an arrangement initially that the district will have some space here to use that will be assigned. That can change. I'm not sure I understood the concern about that. It'd be a violation of federal law to open up district mail. And at the end of the day, you just got to trust people that if a letter comes to the district or the hospital, someone's going to give it to the district. There was a question about why is there only a 2% incremental increase in the rent as each year go by. Again, we went to a third-party appraisal, Jones Lang LaSalle, and they performed a review of this, and it's a commercially reasonable standard increase in rent. Now understand, that happens regardless if we're splitting that for $2.5 million. If revenues exceed expenses, after we get our $2.5 million back, if there's more money, it's split half. That goes to increase rent. Plus, we also have the 2% increase raise.
And Mac actually also is a greater of CPI.
CPI or 2%. Thank you. Someone appropriately pointed out that in terms of the facility lease and the operation agreement, the 25-year term, we changed it in one. It's my bad. I forgot to change it in the other. We fixed that. Initially, the term was going to be a flat 25 years. What we've been able to negotiate is that the initial term is 10 years, but at 5 years, we get together and we decide, do we want to go for the remainder of that 10-year term? So at 5 years, we take a look back. Is this working? Do we want to keep going? If the decision is made we want to finish that term, then what we really do is have a new 10-year term. So every 5 years, what you're doing is getting together to discuss if we're going to live together for another 10 years. And it's now mirrored in both agreements. Question, why assuming responsibility for material discrepancies in financial statements? Again, it's a standard clause. You know, they have a right, just as we have a right to say, if you didn't show us what you're supposed to show us and we're damaged, you're responsible for that. Those, as best I could tell, were the major ministerial questions. Now, I've got kind of a summary. Do you want me to?
I mean, you did a pretty good job.
Okay.
Of summarizing.
I have another summary that I typed it. I'm an epically bad typer, and my typing abilities are only exceeded by my inability to spell. So it's full of typos and misspellings, but it essentially says the same thing.
Mac, I know you obviously are hired by the district. Can I ask both of you and Keith what your opinion is of this deal that you put together?
You want to go first, and then I'll follow up?
Sure, and I think what we've tried to convey is that nothing in life comes with a guarantee. We cannot guarantee you that you're going to make $1 billion from this or $1.6 billion unless you go buy a lottery ticket and you're lucky on there. This is intended to create a base from which success can come. It's intended to right the ship of where the hospital was. It's intended to create a relationship with a well-known, well-respected hospital management company that gives this community a chance to keep the hospital in the community in light of all of the things that are working against it, particularly with rural healthcare being such a hard thing to accomplish nowadays. So to me, it is a deal that gives you the best chance that you have in order to continue the operation of the hospital and to continue to provide care to the community.
So rural care is at a crossroads in this country. We see it all over the country. Rural hospitals are shutting down across the country. People die when that happens. So the goal, as explained to us, was we want to keep this hospital going. I'm not a CHC apologist. The lawyers right here, David and I have known each other for, well, since the dark era days. And we have fought over the years and fussed with each other and negotiated this thing hard. I know where David's, I have his number on speed dial, and if this thing goes through and there's a problem, I'll be calling David and saying, David, fix it. What you got here is a hospital that failed, went into bankruptcy, is coming out of bankruptcy, and as best I can tell, the community wants to keep it going. We've created, we found a good, reputable operator, and there are lots of operators out there that are not good. I know that Shane's talked to nearly every hospital that they have. You have a bond obligation that you're never going to avoid. You're going to have to pay. The bond experts, I'm not a bond expert, they came up here and said, without a lease, your bond rating is worse and your interest rate goes up. It'll be harder to sell you bonds. But you're still going to have to pay that debt. So with this lease, you get a better bond rating, and what I heard is that you're going to get about as good an interest rate as you can get out there in the market, because the people that make that decision have said, with this lease, and it is with this operator, they say, we know this operator is good. So your bond situation is better. A comment was made that it appears that communities taking no risk. They're taking all the risk. This is a risk shifting set of agreements. They're taking over the operational risk. They're not putting money in their pocket. It too is a not-for-profit entity. The profits that come in first come to us to the tune of $2.5 million until we get paid either $10 million in 4 years or 7.5 if that doesn't happen in the first 4 years. They're taking over our debt, the vendor account payable debt. We don't have to pay that anymore. They've asked for some rights to make decisions on how the hospital operates. They're a hospital operator. It's appropriate for them to have those rights. Although it was sharply negotiated, repeatedly the CHC people told us, we want this to work. We want this hospital in this community to have this hospital. There is no risk-free deal anywhere on the face of the earth. Could this thing fail? Yes, it could fail. But we know it's going to fail if we don't do something. And this creates an opportunity where we've shifted a massive amount of risk. We've got people that know how to run facilities, and they're taking over a lot of the debt. And we're creating an environment where we're better able to pay the debt that we've incurred so far. It's a good deal. It's a deal that should be accepted in our opinion. And I think you'd end up being glad you did. And I can't guarantee you'll happen. And anybody that wants us to guarantee it is living in a fantasy world. It just will not happen. You can't guarantee it. But does this create an environment for this hospital to turn the corner and become a success? Yes. Will it happen today? No. Next month? No. Will it happen next year? Probably not. It could take 3 or 4 years to completely turn the corner, but you've created an environment that allows you to do it. Otherwise, that's my opinion.
Kevin, your opinion?
First of all, let me say that you've hired very good people, people with a lot of experience, and I think they've given you very good advice. I think they've done a good job at putting this together for you. One of the things you've heard me say before, and Mac has said this about how difficult the environment is that we're currently in. Texas has been leading the nation in the number of hospital closures. Texas also leads the nation according to the National Rural Health Association, Texas leads the nation in the number of small community hospitals at risk. A few months ago, I happened to watch a legislative hearing, and the head of economic development from Bowie came to Austin and testified in front of the legislature. And she told the story of the impact of what happened in Bowie with their hospital on that community. And it's recorded online. You can go online and look at it, but it's not a good story. It was a very, very difficult situation for them. I think the structure that has been proposed to you is a structure that will work for you. One of the things I know for all of you, you've asked the question, is there any alternative? Should we be doing something different? And Matt can tell you this. One of the things is if we were doing this, if we were sitting here having this discussion 10 years ago, 10 years ago you would have had 7 or 8 potential bidders and they would have brought you all sorts of different options, but that was 10 years ago. When you do this today, the chances are that you have nobody bidding. We have, you as you all are well aware, you're currently in bankruptcy. There are likely going to be at least three additional Texas hospitals in bankruptcy, probably within the next 6 months. They are working their way. It is an extraordinarily difficult time in the market, and you have found again both a partner and a structure that has the potential to work for you. And so I do think that this is in the best interest of the district at this time.
Someone we haven't heard from in this board, because we've kept everything right here, is Jim. Can we have your opinion?
Sure. I want you to know that from a company perspective, our mission as a company is to keep hospitals like this alive, viable, taking care of their communities. That's our mission, okay? That's something we take a lot of pride in. Our mission is not a margin. Our mission is not to make a bunch of money, okay? From a company perspective, we reinvest almost every single dollar we make back into the communities we serve, okay? The amount of money that flows through our company nationwide is a very large number. You know, it's over $600 million. But the EBITDA expectation of our company is minuscule. And it's minuscule because, not because we don't do a good job, but because we reinvest that back with the communities we work with. Our model is to help you be successful. And we really try to convey that through this entire process, that we want to be your partner. We don't want to come in and take over. We don't want to come in and tell you how to do things. We want to come in and tell you what we think needs to be done for you to have the best chance for success. And I applaud your board, I applaud Shane in going out and speaking to people that we work with to confirm that that is really how we operate. And I believe what you got the answer was yes. What I'm telling you is what we really do. And the other side of that equation is as we move forward, we're going to be a flexible organization. Okay, if you come up the road and something's changed, a dynamic has changed, an issue is there, we're not going to go say, we're not going to do this because I can stand behind this document. Okay, we're going to say, okay, what do we need to do to make us both positioned for the best success? We want your hospital to be here for your community. Now, I think some of the conversations earlier today, they concern me a little bit because this hospital's not going anywhere. I think you made that comment. It's not going anywhere, and it's not. It's not going anywhere. But is it being as successful as it can be? And I think we have put together a model that positions it for the best opportunity for success, and we are in a true partnership model. David would probably kick me if he could reach me because I don't think partnership's the right word.
No, we always don't like
whatever
it's a relational partnership as opposed to a legal partnership.
But the point that I want you to hear from us is we believe we have put together a deal that is given the best chance of success for all of us. Okay, and we want to move forward with that. The other piece I want you to understand is, in some of the conversations, well, what about this type of organization, this type of organization? One of the big strengths of a company like ours with our mission is my objective is not to pull people out of here, okay? I don't look at a single patient that's coming to get care here and think, where can I move them to make more money somewhere else? My objective is to keep them here. And my objective is for you to be as successful as you possibly can be. Okay, if you go sign up a similar type deal, you may be able to find a similar type deal, but that similar type deal would be with an organization whose objective is to get as much of the care out of this community as they can for their company's benefit. Not in a bad way. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying with this model, you have a partner who has no incentive other than to make this facility as successful as possible. And we are, if you choose to move forward with this, I promise you we will be as good of partners as you, whatever that word they like, as you possibly can be. And we'll continue to work with you to help make sure that we provide as much care for this community as possible.
Jim, there's been a lot of questions about the backstop approach to this. Speak to why you believe you need it and what are the pitfalls, especially coming right out of the gate?
The way we've structured this deal is, again, first dollar benefit goes back to the district, okay, up to $2.5 million, and we're not even at $2.5 million. Now I think we'll get there, but that issue is the idea that CHC is not really getting any additional financial benefit out of this until it goes beyond a certain financial point, okay? But when you change over an organization from a billing perspective, okay, now Medicare and Medicaid for the most part probably will be pretty seamless. We'll apply for a Medicare number, we'll apply for a Medicaid number, and we'll continue to bill under this one until this one's in effect. That should be pretty seamless. But the managed care world, you can get into some complexity. You know, this contract could take some while. They could say they don't want to pay on this contract for a while. So because of that potential disruption, you could have a cash flow disruption during this year where we're transitioning everything over. And if you have that cash flow disruption, when I don't gain any additional financial contribution above and beyond, I don't have anything to fix that. And what I'm fixing is for the benefit of this community, so I'm asking this community's asset to be the backstop for that purpose. Again, the backstop is not to put more money in CHC's pocket. The backstop is there if for some reason in this first year as we're transitioning everything, all the managed care contracts, all of the different pieces, and if for some reason the revenue coming in, the cash flow coming in doesn't meet the expense requirements, we've asked for a backstop. But the backstop will only be used to pay for things for this community or for this hospital.
And it's no different if we maintain the hospital as it sits here today. We would still be filling that role.
Yes, everything that the way this deal is structured, especially for the first multiple years of the deal, there's no cash flow model that's different. It's in a different legal structure, it's maybe going through different buckets, but at the end of the day, all the dollars are going back to the benefit of this community, okay? This deal doesn't create, you know, someone made the comment earlier in this public speaking that, you know, this was a great, wonderful deal for CHC, we understood why we were doing it. You know, this is a good deal for both of us, but this is not a financial driven deal for us in the sense that this is not driving up revenue for us. This is not putting more money in CHC's bank account. This is securing a long-term relationship so we're positioned for long-term success. The money that you're going to be getting is the same money that you would be getting or not getting, whether or not we did or not did the deal, and the expenses that are going to be paid are expenses that would be for this organization or this community either way.
At a higher bond rate.
At a higher bond rate,
Sure. Shane, can you talk to going and visiting some of those?
So I did. I did calls, but I did get on the road and I did go visit some other hospital boards, and you know it was encouraging. It was exactly what I heard from CHC from the beginning. You know, it is a focus on keeping community hospitals there. I talked to a couple of hospitals in person where they were in our same situation. Matter of fact, I wished for our community we would have come across a CHC type 5 years ago, 6 years ago, because they were right where we were going. They were in cash burn. They were headed, you know, to bankruptcy. And what I was told and what I saw and heard was, they not only came in and corrected the finances and made the tough decisions to get you in the black, but they added services. They added services that made it more profitable, that brought in more revenue, so that you could build a hospital instead of constantly being in defend mode. So it was encouraging, and I couldn't find a bad word out there about it with who they're working with. The other thing I really want to say is, there is no magic wand day one to all of a sudden sell this or be able to make enough revenue to start making bond payments. This hospital tomorrow and after this agreement will be the same hospital that it is today. And CHC's made it real clear. They need every dollar that we were using prior to. That means M&O, that means the tax. They need every dollar at the beginning that we were providing to this hospital. There's no magic fix here. But what we're bringing in is a quality management company to take over this hospital that's in the business of running hospitals. 12 of them.
Yeah, more than that if you count L-tax, yes.
That's what they do. A lot of why I want this agreement is this board has proved it's not got a very good track record at running the hospital. I think we found the answer, and I'm ready to enter into a long-term agreement with them and let them run this hospital. And if they can reach some long-term goals, there's an avenue that's a big win for the taxpayer. When we start splitting the revenue, when we start splitting the net revenue over $2.5 million, we're going to take those dollars and we're going to use them for the taxpayer. Job one is the foundation to make sure we have a hospital here for a long time. That's what this does. Second, we'll focus on quality health care. Third, we will get to the taxpayer. There's just not a magic wand day one. We are going to get to the taxpayer, but we've got to have a foundation first. We've got to have a hospital that's profitable and continues to grow its profits so that we can take care of the taxpayer down the road.
I'd like to ask a question, and Jim, you might be able to address this. Some of our employees are here. Can you just kind of address what they might expect as far as their paid time off and their employment?
We are, again, because of the timing of this, we're probably going to have some transitional period. So we're probably going to have the employees switch over probably January 1, just from a processing perspective. But their benefits will switch over to the exact same benefits I have. So I personally like my benefits. I think they're a good benefit package, but it's the exact same benefit plan that all of our CHC employees, corporate employees have. Our corporate employees that are on the CHC benefits are different than our field facilities that are on it. So it's the same benefit plan. It's a good benefit plan. So that will be the PTO and all that. I think it's the way it's planned to be structured. Is it just gets a straight carryover. So if you have something today, it's going to be under this particular set of entity today, and then later it's going to be under a different entity, but it's going to be the same component. The PTO that's there will carry over just like you had. And hopefully, we've been here about 6 months, almost 6 months, I think the first, and I hope the employees have seen. I think some of them you've heard this from. We want the employees to like their jobs. We want a model where we're taking good care of the employees, because a stable workforce is essential to giving good patient care to get people to say they want to come here. And that's how we operate everywhere we operate. And that is, we'll make the hard decisions that need to be made. I don't want to make it sound like a panacea that we're going to make everyone happy, because sometimes we go in places and they're overstaffed. Now that's not the case here. Luckily, you have gone through a transitional period with another management company that made some of those hard decisions early on. The reality is we see the need to add back in some areas. Okay, so we'll probably increase your cost a little bit. Okay, from the way we choose to operate it, because we think some areas need some more resources. But at the end of the day, we're doing that because we think that's what the overall mix is. We encouraged a rate increase since we got here for the employees, because if you look at your utilization of agency use, when you don't have the numbers the right balance, you don't get enough employees. You don't get enough employees, you end up paying a premium for agency use. So we're trying to get those things balanced out there. So I think long term, your employees will look at this and say this was a good benefit to them by creating a greater level of stability.
Any questions? Jim, I keep hearing you talking about you're doing a good job and everything. You've been here for 5-6 months.
Yes, sir.
Why are you going into a lease? If you're going to make this so great, why can't you stay as a management company and do what you're doing
and increase the boxes here.
The structure of a lease, I was asked a couple of times, why do I want a lease? I want a lease because it gives us greater stability. Okay, it gives us greater stability in the fact that we're going into a 10-year deal, okay? And when I know I have the stability of the 10-year deal, I can convince more people to be part of the success of the future for this organization. You know, when they worry about we're on a 2-year deal or 2.5-year deal, or there's an out after 6 months, you know, all of the CEOs candidates that I brought in, the CFO candidates that we talked to, the CNO candidates that we talked to, it's a really hard sell based off of the dynamics, and I'm not picking on you, there's a lot of boards that have a lot of challenges across the state, across the country, but those professionals aren't excited about coming into a relationship that they think can be gone in 2 years, okay? They want to come somewhere where they know that the leadership structure is stable for the foreseeable future, and this type of deal allows us that. We can tell, when I talk to Tom and say, Tom, I want you to come here, he's like, do you think you're gonna get the lease done? I said, I hope so, but honestly, I can tell you, Tom didn't really want to come here if it was a management contract. And I won't speak for you, but that's, you know, I think that was the sense that I got from most of the candidates. It's the same thing. A lease gives longer-term stability and operational structure so that we can make long-range plans and not have to be worrying about appeasing a 6-month situation so that we're not giving notice to be gone in 2 months. You know, we may, on the contract issues, we may make some people unhappy. You may have some contracts that we think need to be renegotiated. And if I'm on a 2-year term, I got a problem when I go do that because I go stir up the world with a contract, and now those people are mad because I'm squeezing them. If I got a 10-year contract and I'm in a different spot, I'm gonna go push and apply pressure to get the absolute best contract. And they're going to scream about it, but their screaming about it doesn't put me in a spot of worrying that they're going to influence a exiting of our management relationship.
What if we did a management agreement, same thing as you're talking about lease, 5 years, look at the 5, let's just, if it's a go, you go another 5 past that 10.
Yeah, let me address that.
Yes.
It's a real simple. You heard the bond people. They said with the lease.
I was discounting the bond people.
But you can't discount the bond people. He's given his explanation, but these all things, they all work together. He's talking about stability and operation, bringing people in and making it work. You can't discount the bond issue. You're gonna pay more money to borrow the money than if you have a lease. So you get stability and you get the ability to borrow the money at a more favorable rate.
Not arguing that point.
But I know, Ken, you know, I've enjoyed our sparring over the last 2 or 3 meetings. You're a very bright man, but you can't cherry pick a part of the equation and say, I don't want to talk about it, because it works together. It works together. If there was no effect on the bond, maybe the management agreement's the way to go. Now, there are good reasons, and I've negotiated contracts, hundreds and hundreds, where people say, I need it long-term because I'm investing in you early on and I need a reasonable amount of time to recapture my investment. It's a little bit different here. He's trying to get people to come in. But you cannot just separate the bond question from the question of a management agreement. They have to be discussed together because a management agreement won't get you where you need to get from a bond viewpoint. They have to be discussed together.
Ken, I've talked to several doctors about additional services in this building. And one of the first things that comes up is the long-term viability of this building and who's running it. You know, talking to a new pediatrician who we need to come here. And that is one of our biggest concerns is, is it going to be a lease? Talking to an ENT physician who wants to start a practice here. It's the same thing. They want to know that they're going to have that same relationship, that, you know, that it's not going to be a short-term relationship. It's going to be a long-term relationship with us. Same thing with the cardiology groups I've been talking to. They want a long-term commitment from us, and they want a long-term partner. That, you know, it's employees. I've tried to convince a couple of my people I've worked with in the past for a chief nursing officer. And that was one of her biggest concerns, is that we don't have something in place right now that's a long-term. And this was a AAA candidate, you know,
the best we could have gotten here. And she did elect it, she stayed with CHC because she likes what CHC's about. But she went to another facility with CHC, but she wasn't, we don't have anything locked in here, that was her concern.
But the big simplest answer is long-term stability, the ability to have long-range plans, and a partnership model. In a management model, it's not a partnership. In a management model, I am simply carrying out the task and the directions of the organization. I'm still going to do everything I can to make this hospital successful. If you chose not to move forward with the lease, I'm going to do everything I can to make this hospital successful. But I'm hindered by some of my ability to get the best results when we are not true partners. And the model that we're putting together for this lease is a partnership. Whatever legal term you want.
Relational
You
partnership.
said it wasn't a partnership, now we got a guy saying.
No,
Yeah, that's why-
well,
that's
he's
why
not a
I fixed
lawyer.
it, yeah.
Partnership is a very specific legal term, a relational partnership. My wife is my partner, but she's not my partner. You know, we don't have a partnership, we're a partner.
So, Board, we have a motion and a second, and we've had a lot of discussion, on all different areas of this. I'd like to call for a motion, but I'm gonna ask for just instead of an aye, I'm gonna go around and ask you yea or no, yes or no. Now, start over there, Jimmy, yes or no?
No.
Ellie?
Absolutely, yes.
Emily?
Yes.
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 I'll go no because I'm still not on board. In 2 years, I'll be the first one to put in the newspaper, I was wrong.
Okay, I'm going yes. So, hey, motion carries. Congratulations, CHC, and congratulations to the board. And thank you for our attorneys. You did a wonderful job.
It was
We
an
have
honor.
more stuff to take care of here, but,
It was an honor, thank you.
Thank you for all your work you did. Thank you to the executive committee as well.
yeah, let's go,
Thanks, Mike. I hope I don't talk to you for a week.
That's the first time I've heard that.
We've got a
No, my
piece-
partner doesn't want to talk to me,
Okay,
that's not.
let's continue. We've got some,
May we be,
number 13.
may we be dismissed?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Drive safe.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna walk away. We have a great emergency room.
You're in a good place, Keith.
Yeah, that's right. Discussion, take action if needed on issues
I'm gonna
related to
call you
board
2 years.
responsibility on transfer.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I
Financial
couldn't convince
responsibility
you.
to the taxpayer of this district, I believe that was put on there by request from Kent. What's your thing? Number 13.
I was suggesting. You know, I don't.
Like when you asked me a question in open meetings when you said I had more questions, so I think we're even.
And transparency.
Okay.
I'm satisfied with it, you know,
I get
there's still some issues, but I think.
I know we're doing what you're doing. Bringing by respect.
I make the motion that we pull this from the table tonight.
Okay.
If need, we'll re-look at it, readdress it, 6 months, 3 months.
Not take any action on that, on number 13. Number 14, consider and approve capital expenditure request for material management scanners and training. Tom?
Right, I'll do it
I'm
real
sorry.
quick. We have recently hired both a skilled materials manager and a buyer skilled in Meditech utilization. We have seen a significant improvement, work in progress as far as improving our supply train for the hospital. In a moment, I'll show you some of the reasons why financially we need to get these hand scanners in place. The intent is to complement the implementation of the health trust contracts and also to speed up the process of inventory and issuing to the respective departments for both patient care items and also for department consumable supplies. Many hospitals are utilizing the handheld scanners for barcode reading, charging. In addition, we are to complement the scanners and also complement the financials. We have a full house inventory, hands-on inventory scheduled starting this Friday and going through next Wednesday so that we have it completed by October 31st. We will not have the scanners in place by that time, but in the future, it will help significantly with inventory control.
One of the things that usually when we have capital expenditures here, when it's not budgeted, we usually ask, okay, where are you getting it from? Are you getting it from saving? It's gonna save costs. In other words, you don't have on here what's the saving part of it, how you it paid for, where's it coming
Well,
from?
initially, I'm not able to quantify the savings. It would be just to pull a number out of the air to quantify it.
I think what he might
It's
be
tighter
asking
control of
is-
expense and spending on supplies, so we will have it's a tracking mechanism, like a scanning tracking mechanism, all of our supplies come through, then we scan, so we'll have an exact count of what we have in-house, because it'll be scanned as they're used as well. It's my understanding, so it's ability
Is there-
to cut down on.
Is there another capital item that you're taking from to buy this?
To buy on.
I think that's what.
Is that what you were asking?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Well, then, I don't know if
Where are you
we,
gonna take it? Usually we have some place where you say, okay, I'm gonna substitute this for that was budgeted or whatever, and I don't see that in here, and I just wondered where that, because it's generally everything that's on a budget comes from something, even if you switch it out from something else, or how it comes from, this is gonna improve our cost, so we're saving this $20,000 in this way. So I guess that's the kind of thing I'm asking for the board sake, that, it sounds like something you need, but just, I don't see it filled. So we can,
You brought us the capital equipment list first, with all these items. Is there something on that list that you're not gonna get in place of this, since this wasn't on the list?
or would you substitute for, or something like that?
And if it's not, that's fine, take it.
Yeah.
Andy, Robert, didn't we several years ago vote to allow a $50,000 expenditure without board approval? I know we had it at $25,000 when I was on there in 2012, but I thought we increased it.
That's the issue, we don't need to be those ways.
I think it's a capital
Yeah, I
equipment.
think
There are some
capital-
expenditures that, an operational decision that might be under $50,000 that we can do as an operator. But if it's an actual capital, if it's something we're purchasing, my understanding, it's a very small number. It's like $2,500, I think, is the number that we have.
I think when you brought us the equipment list, I think the decision then was to bring any of the capital to, any expenditures,
Because
capital
we were so,
equipment to us for
tight on that.
budget.
Okay.
And like I say, if you don't have something, that's fine, I was just curious if you thought of that or substituted for something else.
Is there additional $13,000 increase in there also for training and putting this equipment up?
That's what I was questioning. It may very well be, it's fine. I mean, I'm not.
One additional
I'm not
item
prepared to say
I
no.
will point out, we've budgeted, projected $900,000 of capital this coming year.
Mhm.
This year, we only spent $61,000.
Okay, your answer.
Of the last year.
Yes, last year.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm still in
Yeah.
last year with this year. I haven't jumped forward yet.
Okay, so,
I'll make a motion.
make a motion, Robbie got a motion to approve, who seconded?
I'll second.
Emily second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consider and approve the financial statements. Roger, you are up again.
We'll try to make this painless and quick. What did not get included in your financial statements, your financials this month is the 12-month trended. What you received is the 4-month trended, and I'll explain to you why I did not put this in, but it is available for distribution. Can I get you to take one and pass it on down? I'm I'm not going to address the 12-month tonight because of time constraints, but I would like to talk with you just a few minutes as far as what you're looking at on the board.
That looks real good. You got it big enough we can read it.
There you go. Okay, the attempt here is to communicate with you, since we're at the end of the fiscal period. September 30 was the end of the fiscal year. What we need to look at, and you got that little red book that I can borrow? That way I don't have to step in front every time. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, first column here, looking at the hospital P&L. First column on the left-hand side, those are the audited balances as of September 30, 2017. First quarter ending December 31st, that's 3 months. Second quarter ending March, that's 3 months. Third quarter ending June. Fourth quarter ending September. These are the pre-audit numbers before we go into audit. Let me restate. We're already in audit. We started audit last week. Either last week or the second week in October, and that may be the same thing. So that is a significant improvement of what occurred here last year. I do believe BK&D is going to try to have the audited financials before the fourth quarter is over, or at the latest at the beginning of the first quarter. Excuse me. I'm still thinking in terms of calendar year. They're going to try to get the audit done before the end of this calendar year or first of next calendar year and present to you, as opposed to like we were last year. I believe it was in July or August before we got the audit presented for 2017. So we're trying to speed up this process, and we've done a lot of work. Allison and Jolene and Donna and even myself have done a lot of work as far as trying to get the hospital district's books in a reputable position. So these are the pre-audit fiscal numbers. I'd like to show you how much better the hospital has done this year than we did last year. First of all, we went up from 111, up to 136 and change. Our gross charges increased by 23%. That is a direct relationship. Seeing more patients, taking care of more patients, charging more patients. When you get down here to the net patient revenue, after all the deductions from revenue, Medicare, Medicaid, add back special payments, etc., the net patient revenue before bad debt, 39. I'm sorry, let's drop down one line. Net patient revenue after bad debt, we were a little over 30 at the last year. We are pre-audit almost 35 for an increase of 4.4 million or 14.7%. So initially, we've gone increase in volume and charges of 23%, increase of net revenue of 14.7%. Tax subsidy revenue, mute point, remained relatively constant. We had a slight decrease of other revenue. You get down to your net revenue, we had a 12.7% year over year. Okay? Christy, can you roll me to the next slide? All right, looking at our expenses. I need to grab my notes here real quick so I can walk you through. A lot of this is top of mind awareness, but I want to make sure that I don't miss some very important points. Salary and labor costs went up $5.6 million. The reason for that predominantly is right here in employee benefits. That's the pension buyout. And then we got some credits back in the fourth quarter. So in total, our pension net expense, the buyout, was $6.1 million. If you recall, we had the initial monies going out, and then we had two monies coming back from THA. So if you take the 6.1 against the 5.6, that means that we had a $500,000 reduction in labor costs year over year. As Jim pointed out, we're going to probably see that go back up some as I kind of like that backstop terminology, but we've got some positions here in-house that we're finding that on a long-term basis, we cannot do without. So there's going to be some staffing that's being added back to the hospital. I mentioned to you about inventory supplies or supply chain and inventory. Year over year, we went up about 33%. Now, granted, volume is driving part of that, but we have not fully implemented, let me restate, we have barely gotten started, not good English, but I think you're catching my drift, on getting health trust supply contracts in place, up and running. So that's going to be a benefit for us in 2019. We're going to see this supply expense decreasing in 2019. Not going to see another 33% increase. It should be going the other way.
Roger, just clarification, the increase is driven by volume
That's,
increase. There's no cost increase since we've done this.
Yeah,
It's just,
the majority of it is volume. But this is still at the higher, a lot of it is still at the
bulk of it is
higher
not
per
implemented.
unit cost that's going to be driven down by implementing the health trust contracts, getting Medline in place, on more of the products, getting the pharmaceuticals converted over, et cetera. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And those handheld devices will help Rosanna on that person. Okay? We have increases here, excuse me. We actually had, we had some reclasses going on between med specialist fees, purchase service and repairs and maintenance. Historically, we had physician costs here in purchase services. In fact, I think, Ken, you brought up that question a few board meetings ago as far as what we were paying on the med specialist fees. So now we've got this, we're doing a better job of getting this sorted out, making sure that med fees are up here and other purchases, including legal fees, et cetera, are down here.
So it went over $1.2 million on med fees?
No, we had some increases in bond legal fees, bond associated legal fees, and we also had increases going to the PFS, Patient Financial Services Provider, GABS. Yeah, I heard your brainwaves there, Tom. Again, that's volume driven. We have more patients, we're billing more patients, and GABS charges on a percentage of cash collections. This is the other side of our increased cash, part of it. And we'll talk about that in just a moment when we get to the balance sheet. The other operating expense went from $2.1 million down to $702,000. That's a $1.5 million drop. What's included in this number in 2017 is the $1.3 million OIG payment that had to be made. Plus there is also a $492,000 bond-related expense that should have been down in this number right here. It was recorded as a operating expense as opposed to non-operating expense, which is where it was recorded in 2018. Depreciation and amortization went down because Meditech, both hardware and MIS software, fully depreciated during this fiscal year. Increase of expense down here is bond related, $2.3 million year over year. Again, this increase is because 492 is up here and it should have been down here. So that's basically the P&L pre-audit.
Is that interest expense at 195.35, is that positive? We got $3.5 million in the interest account, is what I'm asking.
You mean, right, no, this is the operating expense that
Total
we're,
interest expense I was talking about.
oh, okay.
Yeah, what it says.
Yeah, this is the operating expense where we're accruing the interest expense that has to be paid
To the bonds.
for the bonds in upcoming years.
So we got
Okay.
$3.5 million in that account.
We went from 18 mil of bonds
1.8.
up to 40 million in 2018, and that generated an additional $2.3 million of interest expense. Okay? Now, on a go-forward basis, when we get into the balance sheet, well, let's go ahead and go to the balance sheet. As Chris was talking about, as far as the refunding of the bonds and getting a fixed interest, that also means that the interest expense is going to be adjusted based upon a revised debt schedule as opposed to the current 4 debt schedules that we have in place for the 2017, 2017A, B, and the 2018 series. Because right now, as Chris stated, the interest expense is not fixed. So at best, it's currently an estimate to make sure that we're adequately accruing for interest, but once the refunding is done and that interest becomes a fixed rate, then we'll have to go back into the debt schedules and verify the accrued interest that needs, the expense portion that needs to be expensed on a monthly basis.
That fund, for interest payment and everything on the bonds, are we generating any interest that we, on that fund, while it's in the bank? Or is it just set there dead?
Which fund? The M&O and
On the
the
bond
sinking?
payments. On the bond payments. We've got, say, $3.5 million in that. Does it generate any interest?
We'll get there in just a moment, Ken.
You're always,
You're
you're always
getting ahead
behind
of
me.
me. You're getting ahead of me, sir. I'll try to catch up.
Hurry up, catch up.
Okay. Okay, cash. Here's where we were at the end of September. Here's where we are currently. It's increased by 5.1 million. Yes, Ken or Jimmy, whoever's gonna ask me, that does include the roof monies. It's in there, okay? That number right there is approximately 87 days of cash on hand, okay?
I'm gonna throw a curve at you. Does that include the maintenance and operation money?
No, it does not.
Where is that funds in this?
We're getting there. Let's go, Kim. Okay, the main reason here on other accounts receivable that it went down is that there was a large payment of district money that was accrued as of the end of the year that we ultimately received in January of this year. I already mentioned that we got a physical inventory coming up in a couple of days here that's either going to prove or disprove that inventory balance. but I want you to note that it has been coming down throughout this year. And we're wanting to make sure that we've got the right balance there, so that when we do the audit, there's not going to be a big, big hit from that. Okay, here we go, Ken. We're going to jump right down here. Restricted assets. That's where the sinking interest and sinking fund and the M&O are parked. Last year there was only $242,000. There is 1.18 as of the end of the September. Yeah, well, that's end of year. Okay, end of Q4. Now, I want to jump back up here real quick, back to cash, and share with you why we need to have reserves, or what's that term again, Jim? Backstop. We received at the end of September a communique from THA that reads, due to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, that's CMS, recent correction to the final federal fiscal year 2019 inpatient and long-term care hospital prospective payment system rules, that in essence is DRGs, okay? Sometimes, Tom, you gotta use acronyms to explain some of this terminology. Medicare administrative contractors will hold Medicare claims with discharge dates on or after October 1st through October 22nd. CMS corrected the rules to include revised base payment amounts, outlier thresholds, and other components of the previously issued final rule. A summary of the corrected final rules is available in the Federal Register. What that means is that for 3 weeks, we did not and will not be paid for patients who, Medicare inpatients who were here in this hospital from October 1st until tomorrow. So on Wednesday, they may start releasing some of those claims. When you have your payments held up, you still have day-to-day financial obligations to meet in the form of paying vendors, paying employees, paying debt, etc. So that's why you have to have reserves, just like any other business. When the cash isn't coming in and you still got bills to meet, you gotta have money in savings to be able to meet those bills and keep going.
Do you think that's because of overbilling for the hospitals and stuff is the reason they're doing that? So?
No, Medicare changes every year. About this time of year, they have to update their computer systems, and sometimes they're on top of it. Most times they're not and need some additional time to finish up.
Just to make sure, you're gonna get paid that. It's just gonna be a delay in it as they recalculate it under the new rules.
I just think,
That is correct.
The reason it's taking those 22 days was to see if they're doing so much overbilling and everybody's having to send money back.
Well, if we were back at December first quarter cash balance, this event would have been a stressor. It would have been a stressor. In today's environment, it's not. We can weather the storm. But again, that's why you have to build up cash reserves.
Stay in business. I didn't work off shoot.
There you go.
I didn't have quite that much, but I had enough to play with.
Okay, getting down into the liabilities, and I'll finish up here. Accounts payable, when you have a debit, it means that the accounts payable balance went down. You know, it's converse to the assets. When you have a credit on the assets, it means that the asset went down. Accounts payable went down by $2.4 million. The majority of that was due to bond monies that went to pay vendors who had not been paid while we were in bankruptcy. Accrued expense went up 3.5, went down 3.5. Again, paid with bond monies. The other current liabilities went up from 38 to 1.6. The majority of that is the Medicaid uncompensated care DY3, and that still has not been fully resolved. We have asked for assistance from HRP, Healthcare Reimbursement Partners, to look at DY1, DY2, DY3, and DY4. Because 1 and 2 and 4, there is no problem. 3 is an anomaly, and there is a problem. We still have monies to pay back. And we want to know what happened in DY3 that didn't happen in 1, 2, and 4. What's different? So that we can make sure, well, we want to see if we can fix it. And if we can't fix it, at a minimum, we want to make sure that it doesn't happen in future years.
I hate to trouble you again. Is there any GPO savings in the
Remember when I was talking about health trust, that we haven't fully implemented the contracts yet? There is some, but more is coming as we get the contracts in place. Rosanna is working on a lot of the supply contracts, which include Medline contract. That's the big one for supplies. Yes. You know, again, going back, picking on Andy, the handheld, barcode readers. And I'll try to do better next time with the explanation. Okay, here's the significant change on the bonds. End of last year, we were at 18.6. We're currently at 39 because we did pay some principal this year. Bonds went up by 20.4, and again, that will be adjusted as the 4 series of bonds are refinanced. And this is the carryover, the complementary entry from the profit and loss or the operating statement to balance out the balance sheet. However, if you take the $6.1 million of the pension payout out of that number, plus some other related bond costs of about $1 million for the series 2017 A, B, and 2018, we come back to a pretty close to a break even for the fiscal year. And now we go through audit. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Julie. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Okay, so, any other questions on the financial statements? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second, please?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And one left here, consider an approved resolution authorizing power of attorney and declaration of representative for Internal Revenue Service. Allison's going to tell us about that.
Before y'all get upset about the idea, when we're thinking about the IRS, there really is not a problem. For those of you who don't know, I'm Allison Lewis. I am the newest member of our 3-person accounting staff. I came in November of 2017. Been in public accounting for 10 years and stayed home and did a lot at home. The gist is, when I was in the process even before Roger, when Jolene and I were looking through, she came right before me in August of 17. And we were just trying to clean things up, and fire bills kind of on a lot of it. But one of the first things that I wanted to look at was payroll taxes. Because when you have a company that is having cash flow issues, the first thing they think about doing is, oh, we'll withhold the payroll taxes and then we won't deposit them with the IRS. One of the biggest no-nos. I can safely say, I went back to 15 and I went back to 14 because there was a timing lag on when you get in trouble with the IRS. There were no payroll tax deposits that were missed. So there were some that need to be amended, and that's kind of where we're at on this. And you know, our favorite agency, being able to talk to them over the phone, especially with an entity, you have, you know, you need to get a power of attorney. The Form 2848 is a standard boilerplate IRS tax form that is just authorizing me to speak on a very specific basis for the 14 through 19 not plan years, all of the quarters, because what I'm trying to finally get straightened out is from 2014, and that ripples through 15 through 17. I've amended them all, they've accepted it. They're just kind of not acknowledging that I sent things in July. And so I want to get on the phone and talk to somebody rather than get another 60-day letter of, we need more time to think about it. So.
You have to have this resolution for that.
Yes, that resolution, because it's giving me authority on behalf of the Gainesville Hospital District. And it is very limited in scope. Attorneys, CPAs, do those kind of things all the time. It's just me as a staff accountant, because I'm a full-time employee on item C is the reason why I can have that authorization. Yeah, so I've done payroll stuff for 30 years, so this is nothing, it's fun. It's nothing that, you know, I'm concerned about. So I hope you all consider that.
Motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
I'll second. Third.